The scripture, Psalm 23 and John 10, 1 through 10. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me in the right paths for his name's sake. Even though I walk through the darkest valley, I fear no evil. For you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup overflows. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord my whole life long. John 10. Very truly I tell you, anyone who does not enter the sheepfold by the gate, but climbs in by another way, is a thief and a bandit. The one who enters by the gate is the shepherd of the sheep. The gatekeeper opens the gate for him, and the sheep hears his voice. He calls his own sheep by name and leads them out. When he has brought out all his own, he goes ahead of them, and the sheep follow him because they know his voice. They will not follow a stranger, but they will run from him because they do not know the voice of strangers. Jesus used a figure of speech with them, but they did not understand what he was saying to them. So again, Jesus said to them, Verily, truly, I tell you, I am the gate for the sheep. All who came before me are thieves and bandits, but the sheep did not listen to them. I am the gate. Whoever enters by me will be saved, and will come in and go out and find pasture. The thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. I came that they may live, have life, and have it abundantly.
A popular novel written many years ago was entitled The Man in the Gray Flannel Suit. The screenplay, featuring Gregory Peck, tells the story of Tom, a typical young salesman, pushed by his employer, pressured by the competition, consumed by his own lust for money and power. He drove himself like a machine, senseless of what his pursuit of his pursuit of success was costing him. One day, he took stock of himself, faced the fact that he was driven in the attainment of his goals, and he determined that if he wanted to recover his sanity and hold his family together, he would have to revise his goals. Every one of us finds ourselves in that gray flannel suit at one time or another. If we want to recover our balance, we have to refuse to be driven and choose to be led. In the Bible, the Good Shepherd leads rather than drives. Leading is done out of love. Driving comes from desperation. The 23rd Psalm, which depicts God as the Good Shepherd, is probably one of the best loved passages in the Bible. Perhaps the reason for its popularity is that people like ourselves know what it is like to feel driven. We find in it not the picture of a God who is behind us, pushing and moving us forward, but rather the picture of a good shepherd who comforts, rescues, and restores, one who is out front, watching and leading the way. If we come to see God as involved in all of our experiences, as the psalmist did, our own attitudes would be far more positive. The basic attitude that controls the author's whole outlook on life is that he has a personal relationship with God. The Lord is my shepherd, he writes. Having stated that, he then goes on to explain what it means to him that God is his shepherd. The first thing that he does is to credit God with providing for his most basic needs. In a very optimistic statement, he declares, "I shall not want." David, the presumed author of this psalm, was often hungry and without lodging when he was being pursued by King Saul. What he is describing here is an attitude of trust and confidence, which will take a person through such difficulties with optimism. To be in want is a concept that is relative to one's expectations. Contentment is a state of mind, not necessarily related to the way in which other people see our situations. The person who is convinced of the goodness of God still has reason to be optimistic, even when times are difficult. Contentment is a gift from God, and those who have it do not feel that they are in want. The author also sees rest as a gift. God makes me lie down in green pastures, he says. If we don't rest as we should, it affects our whole outlook. A woman complained to her pastor, "I need your advice on something yesterday, but when I phoned you, you weren't in." "I'm sorry," said the pastor, "but yesterday was my day off." "A day off?" she sniffed. "You know the devil never takes a day off." "That's true," said the pastor, "and if I didn't have a day off, I'd be just like him." Life calls us to have a balance between rest and activity. A friend tells how the full meaning of this psalm was brought home to him. One morning, as he was dressing, he felt a sharp pain in his back. When that didn't go away, he went to see his doctor, who put him in the hospital. Like most busy people, he was pretty unhappy with what he considered to be a waste of time. His calendar was full, but his doctor told him to cancel all of his appointments for a month. As he lay there frustrated by the inactivity, a minister friend came to call on him and said, "Now, Charlie, you're going to learn the meaning of 'He makes me lie down.'" As he thought about it, it occurred to him that sometimes God puts us on our backs in order to give us a chance to look up. If we do not willingly take a rest when we should, then weariness or illness may compel us to, and we discover that in the rest we can find renewal of our spirits. In a similar vein, the author sees quietness as something God provides. A great pianist was once asked by an admirer, "How do you handle the notes as you do?" The artist answered, "The notes I handle no better than many pianists, but the pauses between the notes, that is where the art lies." In life too, it is in the quiet places that contribute meaning. The psalmist in Psalm 46:10, speaking for God, said, "Be still and know that I am God." The psalmist in Psalm 23 says, God restores his soul. Have you ever been on a vacation where you've looked out at the beauty of God's creation and thought, it doesn't get any better than this? Such moments restore the soul. And as far as the psalmist is concerned, God has created them all. The second thing that the psalmist shares with us is that the Lord is a shepherd who guides. He leads me in right paths, says the author. A traveler in ancient Greece had lost his way, and seeking to find it, asked directions of a man by the roadside who turned out to be Socrates. "How can I reach Mount Olympus?" asked the traveler. Socrates is said to have replied, "Just make sure that every step you take goes in that direction." When we set out on a path, it is helpful to have a guide that we can fix our eyes on, who leads us to our destination. For us, that guide is Jesus. Though the psalmist is confident of God's guidance, he is also realistic. He acknowledges that his path will pass through dark places, but he believes that God is with him. Our thoughts most frequently go to death when we hear this, because we use the phrase, the valley of the shadow of death, which means any of those sorrow-producing experiences which makes the sun seem to set in our lives. But the psalmist is giving his testimony about that. He feels that God is with him, and these negative experiences have lost their power to enslave him with fear. While there is no guarantee of immunity from danger, he has found the assurance of God's nearness sufficient to keep him going. The psalmist continues his work by changing slightly his metaphor for God from shepherd to Palestinian host. It is part of the tradition of hospitality in the Near East that if a person attaches himself to the tent of a host, even by so limited as a touching of a tent rope, the host becomes responsible for that person's sustenance and protection for as long as the guest chooses to stay, even if the guest is being pursued by enemies. So the author writes of God, "You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil." In other words, you pour healing oil on my wounds and scratches. Not only is the psalmist filled with the gratitude for God's providence, he is convinced now that such loving concern will continue. Whether one is hopeful or trustful is often the result of experiences that they have had in the past. Immediately following World War II, the Allied armies gathered up many hungry, homeless children and placed them in large camps. The children were abundantly fed and cared for. However, at night, many of them did not sleep well. They seemed restless and afraid. It was discovered that they feared that there would be nothing to eat the next day. A psychologist prescribed that after the children were put to bed, each one should receive a slice of bread to hold. It was not to be eaten. It was just to be held. The results were amazing. The children would go to sleep, subconsciously feeling that there would be something to eat in the morning. Little by little, they developed a renewed trust in life based on personal experience. Now, a few nice words offered at a funeral do not suddenly give a survivor faith or a sense of trust in God. This kind of trust is built out of countless lesser experiences that enable a person to look hopefully towards the future. In times of crisis, we cannot be injected with faith. We must draw on that has already been there. That is what the psalmist is doing as he affirms out of his past experiences. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life. Finally, the psalmist comes face to face with his own mortality, and here too, he finds reason to be hopeful. I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. For the person who trusts in God, even death is gain. Through the words of this beautiful psalm, the psalmist has offered his testimony of God's loving care. In closing, I would like to share a poem that I found preparing for today based on Psalm 23. It's called Looking Back on a Full Life. God has walked with me. I could ask nothing more. God has given me green meadows to laugh in, clear streams to think beside, untrodden paths to explore. When I thought the world rested on my shoulders, God put things into perspective. When I lashed out at an unfair world, God calmed me down. When I drifted into harmful ways, God straightened me out. God was with me all the way. I do not know what lies ahead, but I am not afraid. I know you will be with me. Even in death, I will not despair. You will comfort and support me. Though my eyes dim and my mind dulls, you will continue to care about me. Your touch will soothe the tension in my temples. My fears will fade away. I am content. In life, in death, in life beyond, God is with me. All through life, I have found goodness in people. When life ends, I expect to be gathered into the ultimate goodness of God.